Elie, if you wish, you can unmute yourself and take the video off, and I will pass it on to you. I'll stop sharing my screen now so you can introduce yourself.
Beautiful. Can I start?
Yes, you can start.
Excellent. Well, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the universe, and welcome to our webinar with Eshkol Nevo. I'm Elie Rekhess, and I'm the head of Northwestern University IIP, which stands for Israel Innovation Project. We are mostly focused on enhancing technological and scientific collaboration between Northwestern and Israeli University, but are also very much interested in Israeli society, culture, art, and literature. If you're further interested in what we do, you're most welcome to visit our website. Our honored guest today is Eshkol Nevo, and it's a great pleasure to have him with us tonight. Thank you, Eshkol, for providing the time. I learned that you're a very busy man, and it's a great achievement for us to get you here on time. Eshkol is one of, for those who don't recognize the name, is one of Israel's most critically and commercially acclaimed writers. Books, children books, theater plays, movie scripts, and more. He's also known for having established and co-running the biggest creative writing school in this country that has produced by now, I think, 40 graduates who have produced literary work, and this is a huge achievement. All his books have been bestsellers in Israel, and his work has been translated to, I hope I have the most recent figure, 14 languages. This is the last I saw, Eshkol, maybe by now it's 15, but 14 is good. I want to impress you with more statistics. His novels have sold over 1 million copies globally and won or have been nominated for several prestigious literary prizes. I allude very briefly to some of his writings. And I have samples here with me to show. I hope it works. It's perhaps best known book, I don't know, in Hebrew, Arba'a Batim V'Gagua, that was translated into English under the title Homesick. I don't have I couldn't get hold of the English version, which is a good sign. It's out of stock. Was awarded the Raymond Vallier Prize in France. Another well-known book that entered the pantheon of contemporary Israeli literature is Mish'ala Chat Yamina, in English, World Cup Wishes, won the Golden Book Prize in Israel, was awarded the Adei Vizzo Prize in Italy. I don't have the English translation. Neuland is another bestseller, sold for more than 150 copies in Israel alone, and was awarded the Stematsky Prize and others. Next is Shalosh Komot. I don't have the Hebrew version, but I do have the English version. This book won Israel's Platinum Book Prize, was chosen by readers in Tel Aviv to be the best book of 2015, or almost 10 years ago. It was also adopted to the big screen by Italian cult director Nanni Moretti, and was screened at the 2021 Cannes Film Festival. Next, and I'm almost done, the last interview, Rayon Haron, this was found in English, spent 30 weeks at the top of the Israeli bestseller list. Gever Nichnas Bapardes, which we could do the whole hour on the translation of the Hebrew title to English. It came out as inside information, and it's from here that we copied our graphic design. And finally, the last that came out is Lev Ra'ev. A note about Lev Ra'ev, Corriera De La Sera, which is Italy's I don't know whether it's still the leading daily or what used to be a daily, um, recognized Eshkol as one of the most significant writers in the generation globally, and in 2024 chose Elie Rekhess as one of the best books of the year. I will go back to the Italian connection later on, if you may. Eshkol lives in Ra'anana with his wife and his 3 daughters. I'm not sure whether, when I checked the notes, one of the daughters was serving in the army. I don't know whether this is still the case, but you can talk about this later. So, without further ado, I want to start tonight, or deal tonight, with 4 themes: the creative process, the influences on your writing, the issue of translation, which attracts me personally very much, then move to not so much a literary issue, but the role of intellectuals in society, and finally, how not deal with the impact of the war. That's a lot, and I know that you have a lot to say. I have lengthy comments and questions, so without further ado, with your permission, we'll start. So on the creative process, my first question is personal. When you were young and you grew up in Jerusalem, in the US, and in Haifa, in your adolescence, did you know, or did you think, or did you aspire to be a world-renowned writer?
Well, good evening, good afternoon, everybody, Elie, and all our viewers. I'm really happy to be with you and happy about this opportunity to have an open-hearted conversation. Did I know that I would be a writer? No. No, I wanted to be a tennis player, maybe a psychologist like my parents. I wanted to be a judge, and I wanted to be a DJ, playing in weddings. So, but all along, I was writing. I was writing lousy poems for self-usage. I was writing beginnings of stories that I could not find the end to them. And I was writing letters, long letters in the time before FaceTime and before WhatsApp. I used to write long letters, and I think the moment I understood that I wanted to be a writer came quite late, at the age of 23, 24. I was traveling in South America, and I was writing letters to my girlfriend. She was in Israel, and I was writing long letters, and I wanted to write long letters because I wanted to stay in touch with her. I wanted her to not forget me while I'm away. So I wrote long letters, like 10, 15 pages every letter. And the problem with South America backpacking is that sometimes nothing happens. So I started inventing stuff. And I would begin with reality. Today we waited 5 hours for a bus, but then I would start to add scenes that never really happened. And sometimes I would tell my girlfriend in the letter, I would tell her, well, now starts the fiction part of our letter. But sometimes not. I would just go from nonfiction to fiction. And I think that was the turning point. I think I came back from this journey in South America with this kind of I wouldn't say a decision, but an urge. I wanted to write. I felt that writing is a good thing for me. And I was looking for the right moment, the right maybe framework, how to do it. But I think it only came strongly to my mind at the age of 23, 24.
Okay, that's interesting. Quick add up. Have these letters been integrated into any of your writings, or they were kept in the box?
Oh, actually, I feel that maybe the best thing, the best texts I ever written were in these letters because they were full of emotions, but I never used them. They are in a box. But now maybe you give me an idea. Maybe I can come back to the box and let's see what happens when I open them. I definitely use letters in my books. I enjoy writing letters. I enjoy giving my characters the opportunity to write letters or to confess one to each other. I feel that it's a strong way of it's a strong narrative technique that I can use.
So maybe at least one good thing comes out, or will come out of this webinar. So I want to move to another issue, as I said, the influences. Uh, Today, when you look at the old-time writers, Bialik, Benner, and so forth, there's always something to be said about whom they were influenced by, who helped create their worldview. And what I want to ask you, are there any roots in your background, in your childhood memories, family relations, neighborhoods, friendships, early loves, etc., which present and future PhD students will be writing on your work, and I'm sure that already a couple who do that, will eventually identify as sources of influence for your writing? It's a bit of a long sentence, but
No, I completely understand the question. It's very elusive. Influences are elusive. Sometimes you're aware of them, sometimes not. What came to my mind while you were asking the question was my aunt. Her name was Noah Eshkol, and she was a choreographer, actually, a dancer and a choreographer, and she was doing carpets that you hang on the wall, not the kind that you step on with your feet, but it's like art. And she was the artist of the family. So, like a typical Saturday in my childhood, we would visit my grandma, which was a classical Yiddish grandma, mainly into feeding us. And then after finishing this visit, we would go in the same city in Hulon, 500 meters, and find ourselves in a completely different world, like a bohemian house full of cats and dogs and many people that you sometimes I didn't really understand what were they doing there. Maybe the dancers, maybe boyfriends of my aunt. And the whole conversation was always about art and politics and full of passion. So if I, if I go back, I think maybe there it kind of I realized what is it to be an artist. I saw her passion. I saw the way she lives. I had a rare opportunity to do a homage to my aunt. After she died, we found love letters that she wrote while she was studying dance in London. She had a boyfriend in Israel. Talking about letters, she wrote letters. Long distance relationship in the 50s. And we found these letters and I was attracted to them. And I kind of created a story in my new book, Lev Raev, Hungry Heart. I guess it would be translated to English. I have a short story based on the letters of my beloved aunt, kind of a mix between her words and my words. And I felt it's a good way to do a homage to my inspiration.
amazing. I agree that letters are those who keep them are an amazing source. I just finished reading the biography of Yitzhak ben Aaron by Yael Gewirtz. I don't know if you saw if you know the book. It's an amazing book to read nowadays about icons, dinosaurs of the past. And the letters that he wrote are also play a major. She had access to. But I want to proceed. And your novels are deeply character driven, with an emotional depth that resonates with readers. How do you develop the character? Do they come fully formed, or do they evolve as you write?
Hmm. I just read a book by Haruki Murakami, the Japanese writer. It's called Writing as a Profession, and he uses a metaphor regarding characters, which I really liked. He's talking about a magnet. You start writing, and then there's this magnet that pulls characteristics that you run into daily life, and it pulls the characteristics into the characters. Like it glues the characteristics into the characters, and then the character is created in a process that it's hard um, to reverse. Sometimes the character is on the page, and it takes me a while, or I need perspective to understand where did it come from? Where did I? Sometimes I write women. I have a lot of women characters, and I'm a man. So where did this woman come from? It's not only observation. Of course, I live in a house full of women. I have 3 daughters, but it's not only observation. It's a lot of observation, a lot of like hunting for characteristics and nuances. But
Pardon me. Sorry, I know this should not be done. Do you consult?
Definitely. If for instance, if I'm writing first person woman character, there's always a certain level of uncertainty. I'm afraid that I'm getting it wrong, even though I do it a lot. Still, before I publish, I give it to like preferred readers, the women readers, to check and find out have I made mistakes. Of course, if I go into a field which I'm not an expert in, for instance, if I'm writing about a doctor in a hospital, I don't have doctors in my family, so I would do a lot of research. I would find out whatever I need to write the character, but then when I end, I will give a couple of doctors to check, did I get it wrong? Sometimes it's a tiny detail that I got wrong that can ruin the whole suspension of disbelief, as we call it in the storytelling profession. So I wander around the world. When I'm writing, sometimes I go in, I meet people, or I do readings when I'm writing, and I start the reading with telling them, look, I have to warn you, I'm in a writing process right now. Whoever is now in this venue may find himself in the book, because I'm hunting right now. I'm looking for the right glasses, I'm looking for the right shoes, or the right bag. I think it's a combination of hunting and also finding the character within yourself, finding this woman that I'm writing, or this child, or this old man, finding him in myself and finding the way I can connect to him. It's definitely the most fascinating aspect of writing, the way characters are created, built like from words into the pages, and then when you read, you feel these are real people. And I feel that they are real people. You mentioned the World Cup wishes, Mishalachat Yemina. So when it's in the center, the center of this book, in the heart of the book, 4 male characters, 4 friends. And while I was writing the book, there was a birthday to my daughter. She was then, I guess, around 4 or 5. And we made this party. We did this huge party, and all our friends came. And while the party was going on, I had this strange feeling that someone is missing. Like someone that I really wanted to come did not come. And then only when the party ended, I realized that the characters didn't come. Like my imaginary friends, Yuval, Amichai, Churchill, Ophir, these are the characters of the book. I felt so attached to them while I was writing that like they were real people. So it comes to that. I can get, when I'm in a writing process, I can dream about my characters. I can miss them. I can think about them day and night, and then of course the book is published and they become property of the reader, the property of the reader.
You struggle with them?
Do I struggle with them sometimes? Like you mentioned, 3 Floors Up. I think that from all of my books, 3 Floors Up is, the characters of this book are full of flaws. and they make a lot of mistakes, and it makes the narrative extremely interesting to write. But sometimes during the writing of this book, I felt like shouting at my own characters, don't do it. Don't do it. If you want to find out what happened to your daughter, the way is not to harass the baby, the granddaughter of the babysitter. That's not a good idea for you, man. But you know, he had to do it. He had to make this mistake, and then the story became more interesting.
So, two more questions on this section. Many writers struggle with self-doubt, dilemmas, perplexities. Have you ever faced a writer's block when you're stuck and you don't know how to overcome it?
Definitely. I would say in my computer, I have 2 books that I have not published because I got stuck. I faced a writer's block which I could not overcome. I try to use all the techniques that I know. I listening to music, meeting interesting people, going on a trip to Jerusalem or going on a train in Europe, and it didn't work. And something was not working. And I think in retrospective, I think when you sometimes the problem is not tactic, it's strategic. Sometimes in the heart of the book, there's a question which you are not able to understand yet. You have to mature more in order to understand. So looking back, I'm happy that I did not publish these 2 books. What I do when I get stuck is write another story, another thing. I go to another story. Lev Raev, Hungry Heart, my latest book in Hebrew was actually, it's 20 short stories, and most of them were written while I had a writer's block in another text. And then I said, okay, I'm stuck with this. I'm going to write a short story right now. And it's part of the process. It's kind of a way, these moments are also important. Sometimes you have to understand something about your text, about the characters, about the setting, about the plot. You took the wrong turn. And you know, it's interesting. I feel these things in my body. When something is going wrong in the book, I can feel it in my body. Suddenly I'm tired when I'm writing. Suddenly I can fall asleep on my own book, my own text. And this is a sign that maybe I went in the wrong direction. So I can feel things in my body when I'm writing when I'm into a good process, the kind of a truthful process, I feel it in my body. When it's false, when I'm losing emotional connection with the text, I can feel it in my body. So I think I got better during the years listening to my body at an earlier stage.
Additional question, which I admittedly say is unfair. Which of your book is your favorite? Now, I know it's like asking of the 5 kids, which kid?
Yeah, I'm supposed to say, of course, I love them all. You cannot choose between your books. It's not fair. But I will tell you the truth because we are now in this intimate setting of our webinar. I have a thing with World Cup Wishes. It's a book that I've written 2000. It was published in 2007. I still think about the characters, and I'm even toying with the possibility of writing a sequel. Something is special about this book. And maybe because the friendship that I'm writing about in this book is still present in my life. I'm still part of this group of friends. It's still important to me. And maybe because this book has become a theater play that is still running in high schools in Israel. And maybe because young people rediscovered it during the war. I don't know if you know, or I don't know if our viewers know, but in the Gaza Strip, you are not allowed to use your cell phone as a soldier. And then many people just came back to reading. So the last year I've been getting hundreds of emails and WhatsApps from soldiers reading the book and writing to me how important it was for them. So kind of like brought me back to think about the characters. And maybe one day I will be able to write the sequel. It's frightening to touch something that you have already published, but let's see. It's also a challenge.
Okay, now the real last question regarding creativity has to do with biographical elements in your writing, and you already alluded to that. 3 floors up, the novel structure is influenced by Freudian psychology. Now, you mentioned your parents that were both psychologists. I should pay tribute to your father, at least. I had the honor to know Professor Eshkol Nevo of Haifa University, with whom I worked alongside with Gabi Salomon, I want to mention his name, and Yochanan Hoffman, I want to mention his name, on the Arab minority in Israel, on views and attitudes of the Arab minority. Interestingly, you almost didn't touch on this, on this minority to the best of my knowledge, other than the Palestinian student, but that's another story. So do these personal backgrounds impact your writing, your biographical experiences, at least in this psychological tunnel?
You know, it's interesting. My mother, who's also a psychologist, Ofra Nevo, now she started writing her memories, and she sends them to in our WhatsApp group, the big WhatsApp group of the family. And I'm reading them, and I'm thinking to myself that it seems like her memories are already organized in a form of a story. Usually when you work with people on their memories, when they want to make a book out of them, you have to go through a long process until you reach the point that it becomes a story. A memory becomes a story. My mother has it already in her mind as many stories. And if you think about her father, which was the 3rd Prime Minister of Israel, Elie Eshkol, he was known for being a storyteller. He would tell a story in the middle of political negotiation and break the ice. And then people could feel more at ease and maybe more willing to compromise. He has this famous saying, I compromise and I compromise until I get what I want, which
was
is
in Haaretz this weekend.
yes.
There's a query.
It was in the quiz. It was in the quiz.
Yes.
So I think I now I understand that I was raised in a family of storytellers. So in that sense, I guess I have this in my body. Biography is always my basis. This is my starting point. I had a meeting in a high-tech company in Israel, and the CEO for finance asked me. She read the last interview, and the main character is a writer. So she asked me, Mr. Nevo, please tell me, how much of this book is autobiographical? And before I was able to answer, she said, but don't tell me stories. I want a number. Give me a number. I want a percentage. So I thought about it a while. I pretended to be calculating, and I answered by saying 66.6% is biographical. And she was very satisfied with this number. And you know, the truth is, it's the relationship between biography and fiction are so complicated. Sometimes biography is a starting point, and then you get into fiction. Sometimes you write something imaginary, and then it happens later in your life. It happened to me a couple of times that like the book was the prophecy of my real life. So it's a riddle, and because of the fact that it's a riddle, I'm still fascinated by it, and I still enjoy this elusive connection.
It's really amazing, and I already have to thank you for letting us into your inner world, because you know, your books are selling well, people read it, but people do not have the opportunity to talk to the writer and understand these intimate, I would say, facets of his persona and what leads to what, and that yes, there are hesitations, and yes, there are. You don't just sit at the desk and out of your sleeve comes a best-selling novel. So thank you for that. And I now want to move to the next section. Time is running. The challenge of translation. I'm fascinated by that. I'm trying to understand how Japanese is one of the languages, right? And, you know, we all adore the Japanese and have great respect to Japanese tradition, but I'm trying to understand how your scenes, whatever you describe is being transferred and transitioned to so many languages. Hebrew is is a difficult language to translate, and there are specific phrases or ideas. Are there any difficulties of this kind that you encountered in the process of translation that you couldn't surpass the hurdle because of the Hebrew? I know I alluded to Pardes, which we don't have time to go into what the acronym says, but maybe you could share with us a little bit of the dilemmas of translation.
Let's start with Japanese, because you mentioned the Japanese. Yeah.
Again, no offense to any, I don't want any diplomatic.
So Three Floors Up was translated to Japanese and published in Japan. And actually, I was kind of wondering to myself, like, in what way they would connect to this book, which was completely Israeli and really far. I assume that it's not so close to the way that the Japanese culture, the way that they think about life. And then the book was published, and I had a couple of interviews, and one of them was with a journalist. After 10 minutes of conversation about the book, we found ourselves diving into this very deep conversation about parenthood, because Three Floors Up basically is a book about the dark sides of parenthood. And it turns out that she read the book and she felt that the book is about her and about her relationship with her son. And then I shared my own experiences as a parent, as a father for three daughters, and we exchanged ideas and exchanged, I would say, agonies. And it was so amazing. So I again and again, I am surprised and amazed, and I feel so lucky that books that I write here in my house in Israel in Hebrew, people around the world can find themselves deeply attached to my stories, to my characters. They find themselves in this story. So it's magic. Now, of course, translation is a challenge. I'll give one example. There's a very famous Israeli singer, which is called Ehud Banai. Ehud Banai in Israel, when I tell my Israeli reader, when the name Ehud Banai is written in a book, nobody needs explanations. Everybody knows his songs, what he represents, his attitude, his presence in the Israeli culture world. He's a huge star in Israel and a big inspiration for me personally. Because of that, I put a scene in my book in which the character, which is a writer, goes to the Galilee and he meets Ehud Banai. Now, there was no need for explanations to my Israeli reader. What does it mean? But then the book is translated to English, and I get a telephone call from my translator, Sondra Silverstone. And she tells me, Eshkol, nobody knows in the United States who is Ehud Banai. So what do you want to do about it? Probably you don't want us to translate it literally, like Ehud the builder, which Banai is the builder. So what do you want to do about it? And do you want me to cut like a footnote? I said, no footnote, because the rhythm of the book will be harmed. So let's think for a moment. Who is the American equivalent for Ehud Banai, well, maybe Bob Dylan, like folk singer, political in a way, writes his own lyrics. No, he's known for a high quality of storytelling in his lyrics. So I thought about it for a while, and then we had this solution together. Like when we describe the scene of Ehud Banai playing on his guitar in the Galilee, in Rosh Pina, we will add a harmonica, which he actually plays a lot, this harmonica. And in the translation, it would be written, he played the guitar and a Dylan-like harmonica. And then this is a hint to my American reader or to my British reader that Ehud Banai is the Israeli Dylan. So you are looking for these kind of solutions. I'll give another example. I'm writing this war journal, collection of the experiences I've been facing the last year in Israel, and I'm publishing it around Europe. And one of the scenes is a description of my father, which you know, Baruch, and my brother and me. We are going to the Galilee to see what happened to the house of the family that is near the border with Hezbollah. It's the house that my father built, and we could not visit this house for a year because it was army controlled. So I'm describing this journey, which was kind of also very emotional because we are attached to the house. And then I'm describing a stop in a place in Khofesh, and we are eating sambusak. Sambusak is a kind of, I don't even know how to explain it in English. Sambusak, it's untranslatable. So my Italian translator, she calls me and she said, nobody knows what is sambusak. How can we replace it? And so we had this dilemma between falafel and baklava. And we decided that baklava is more typical of this area of the Galilee, and we ended up with baklava instead of sambusa. It's a lot of tiny solutions in order to adapt. Generally speaking, I feel that it's a miracle. Translation is a miracle. There are compromises to be made, but it's a miracle.
I really think it's fascinating. And apropos Italy, I mentioned to you that I want to go back. I'll tell you a little episode. I met at Northwestern a Fulbright scholar who visited from Italy. And we met, we started talking, and I said, oh, I'm from Israel. And her eyes glittered, and she said, oh, Eshkol Nevo? I said, yes, Israel, Eshkol Nevo. You have a huge success in Italy. I mentioned Corriera De La Sera, the movie, the translations, the write-ups that you have in the press. What is it that and I think your Italian is progressing nicely.
Slowly, lentamente.
Lentamente. Okay, so we're good. So what can you very briefly tell me, because we still have two topics to discuss. What is it? What is the Italian connection? Why are they fascinated by
very briefly? I would say it would be so brief that you will have to be very attentive because it will end very quickly. There is an Italian word. It's kind of a street word. When they are asked a question and they have no idea how to answer, they do this kind of boh, which means I don't know. This is definitely a huge success in Italy for my books, bestsellers, hundreds of people coming to readings, movie adaptations. Now they're working on the second movie adaptation. It is unbelievable. Sometimes I come there and I feel like I'm kind of in a dream. How can it be? And even during the war, when being an Israeli writer outside of Israel was extremely challenging, and yet even during the war, people came to my readings and they wanted to support and they wanted to hear what I have to say. And so I kind of I don't know why. I don't know why. There's some kind. It's a love story. How can you explain love?
Good question. Let's talk about that. So we now move to the latter part, to the contemporary. And you know, wondering with myself, where should we start with the Nevo the writer, Nevo the intellectual, Nevo the involved, Nevo who writes the war diary, but that's what we decide. So first, I want to talk about the role of intellectuals during time of national crisis. Without yet going into the specifics of the Gaza war. It's a common belief that during times of national crisis, writers, intellectuals have a mission to critique societal structures, highlight injustices, advocate for change. And if I want to further dramatize it, I would say that they may act as the conscience of society, recording its truth, questioning its flaws, and inspiring progress. And in our short history of the State of Israel, writers did play this role, undoubtedly so. So, do you think that literature has a role in bridging political and social divides? This is my question now. Or it's simply to reflect reality. Do you personally feel such a responsibility of being part of the elite, not the intellectual elite? I'm not making any societal divisions here. And do you have such a role?
I feel that I care. I care for my country. The last year has been tragic. Many people faced loss, faced fear, trauma, post-trauma. My intuition led me more into therapeutic work than to speaking on the stage in a demonstration or writing furious articles. I felt that the country has become sad, and people need stories. They need someone to facilitate their own writing, maybe. Mainly what I've been doing the last year is meeting with groups of people and using storytelling and writing in a therapeutical way. Sometimes bereaved brothers, people that were evacuated from the Gaza envelope, wounded people, soldiers wounded in the war, students that came back from the war and they are post-traumatic and they want to write with someone. So I actually on a weekly basis, I get requests from all sorts of groups, either wanting to be told a story, that I would read them stories and talk with them about my stories, or either they want to write themselves and they want someone to enable them, like to give them the inspiration. And I've been saying yes, basically, to every request I got, because you feel that this is the way, I felt that this is the way that a writer like me can contribute to the society right now. Now, of course, there are other ways that I can be present. And during the time before the war, we were demonstrating and trying to defend our democracy. And I was speaking actually every week in a demonstration, writing articles and being highly political. The last year, I felt that I want to do something different, but maybe it will change again. Who knows? We all hope that the war is about to end, and we are praying for that. Today, a hostage in my town, a hostage from my town came back to the house of her parents, Naama. And Naama Levi came back, and the whole town was full of people waiting for her. And so we're waiting for the war to finish, and maybe then I will feel differently about my role. But I do feel, I don't know if it's a responsibility, but I feel that I care, and I feel that I have this, in Italian, they say la potenza della scrittura, like the power of writing, the power of storytelling. I can use it. And in every moment in time, I can choose in what way to use it. I'm talking a lot because it's a question, a dilemma. It's a dilemma. It's an open dilemma. What is the best way for me to contribute, to influence, to make an impact, to do something meaningful? I'm still wondering about it.
It's interesting. I'm listening to you, and so before I forget, a brand of writing that would represent escapism for the needy? Did you think about providing that?
No, actually, I was just thinking about it today, that every room I entered the last year, I felt that escapism was not the right thing to do, because I felt people need authenticity. If they are in pain, if they are suffering, if they are missing someone they lost, they need to be recognized. You need to recognize the pain that is present in the room. And whether it's through writing, letting people, enabling them to write about their pain, or whether I'm through choosing the right story to read to them. And then after you go through pain, you could go to hope. You can go to hope, you can talk about the future, you can talk about the spring, you can even, do a little bit of escapism. But first, if you're not acknowledging the pain in the room, nobody wants to, to cooperate. This was my feeling the last, at least, the last year in my country.
So as I started saying, interestingly, you haven't referred to the political aspect of the situation. And I'm thinking of other writers. I mentioned Ben Aaron, who was very much influenced by his personality. Amos Oz, and the term that was coined by Ben Aaron in Hebrew, Oz letmura, courage for change prior to disaster, free translation, which, by the way, was not his, was Israel Galili's. But there is a political element here, which you avoided totally.
No, I'm not avoiding it.
I'm saying let me rephrase. You haven't mentioned it yet.
Okay, so let me mention it for a moment. I'll mention it, and I'll explain why for me now it's not the main issue in my work. I oppose the current government in Israel. Actually, everybody knows. I wrote articles. I actually wrote an article a month after the government was formed, telling people or asking people to go on the streets, and because it's an anti-Israeli government. So it's kind of it's well known, and I'm quite clear in that way. But I feel, and maybe we should meet again in a year from now.
I should show this article here.
Yeah.
Entitled
Yeah,
Netanyahu.
that's me. It sounds like me.
Israeli. This was published in March 21. Netanyahu forgot what it is to be Israeli. So
yes, definitely.
Everything is documented.
I think we should meet again in a couple of months. Maybe I will be coming back to be specifically political, and also we are looking forward to an elections in 2026, and definitely you will hear me then. This year I felt that inside, like, political quarrels are less what I want to do, and more I want to be working with people, like on ground level, like to meet people, to help them, to listen to them, to tell their stories, to bring their stories to Europe and to the world. This is, I felt, was more important than another political article. But who knows? Maybe it will change.
In many ways, what we do here is we are mirroring your intellectual world, your literary creativity true to this moment. This is an updated Eshkol Nevo in many ways. And again, I thank you for that. I do want to add that regarding the impact of the war, and you did allude to that already. In October 2024, you published a lengthy article in Ynet entitled "Here and There in a Saddened Land, the War Diary of Eshkol Nevo," which is also well illustrated, like 12, 13 pages, which is a collection of touching personal impressions, images, emotional stories gathered in the course of war. And I'm bringing this up to strengthen what you said about what you think your contribution should be. And then I checked other sources and found out of the mothers of soldiers who ask you to dedicate books to their serving soldiers, and you do that, and they come and pick it up. Also, mothers of fallen soldier. I think the Yavetz family is mentioned. Can you say a word about this interaction with the families?
That's extremely Israeli. I wonder if that could happen to an American writer when you get, because everybody knows everybody in Israel. Everybody knows someone who knows someone who knows you. And then you get a WhatsApp and you get an email, and there's a mother of a soldier. Well, my son is just, he has 24 hours. I want to give him a book of yours, but I want a special dedication. How can we do this? And of course, I say yes. So I end up putting the book in the electricity box, and the mother comes, and at the morning I find out a cake. I find a cake or a little plant that she left me. So this and people can be asking that in the street or in the WhatsApp or in the mail, and I'm cooperating because I feel that if someone is in need for a book of mine, I want to help. It's been going on throughout all this year, and it touches my heart. Sometimes sometimes you don't even see the people. I got soldiers that came in the middle of the night, and then they took the books, and then they kind of disappeared. And then maybe a month later, I would get a thank you picture. But yeah, that's the Israeli society in a way. It's you're all kind of interconnected in a way that you cannot be solitary, and I think I like it.
No, this is really special, and I just want to make sure that while we talk about the war, we do include in our conversation a term that I saw you using several times regarding the impact of the war and what you do with it, and this is the function of being a healer. You speak about healing, which is not that common, I would say. You wouldn't, healing has a lot of connotations, spiritual and not spiritual. But you at least from the little I saw, you keep mentioning this function of healing or healer. Can you explain what you mean by that?
People are wounded. Sometimes you can see their wounds. Sometimes the wounds are hidden. And you can even feel it in a Zoom session. We did a huge Zoom sessions at the beginning of the war. We called them writing zones. They were about expressing your feelings. And I'm facilitating the Zoom, and I see the faces of the people in the little, the little boxes, the little squares, and I see that they're pale and they are post something, and they want to express their feelings. And sometimes if I'm able to lead them through this process and enable them to see that not only the present is tough, but they have the past, they can have memories, they can look at the future, they can travel in time, they can use writing in order to meditate about their own feelings. And sometimes at the ends of these sessions, you feel that people, maybe they're not healed, but for at least 60 minutes, they were able to breathe a little bit. So yes, I've been doing it a lot the last year. Sometimes I wonder, am I able actually to help? Sometimes you can feel that it was helpful. Sometimes only later on, I met with wounded people, wounded soldiers. They were actually really in pain while I was reading to them. And only weeks later, I got this text message from one of them explaining to me, like, how was this meeting meaningful for him, that kind of brought him back into writing. And so, yeah, it's a lot of my parents are psychologists. I studied psychology. I decided not to be a psychologist like my parents, but in the turn of life, kind of found myself in the healer doing healing the last year. And yeah, I feel meaningful. I feel it's meaningful, and of course I'm desperately waiting for this to end. It's enough. It's been enough suffering, also here and in Gaza and in Lebanon. Enough suffering. So I hope it will end.
Yeah, we all do, and our time is almost over. I have maybe this will be my last question. Maybe there will be a question or two from the crowd, from the listeners. So I began with asking you how it began. Were you thinking about your image as a well-known, established, and liked writer when you were young? And now I would reverse the question and ask you, where do you see yourself in, what should I say, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years?
Wow. You know, the first thing that comes to my mind is not me, it's my daughters, actually. I kind of worry about them. Two of them are soldiers right now. You mentioned at the beginning that one of them, but now actually another joined. And so I kind of want my daughters to be safe and happy. And so let's one wish goes to my daughters. And then I creatively wise or creativity wise, I would say I wish to be hungry. I want to be hungry, still craving to create something new, still surprising myself with something that I haven't done before, surprising my readers, doing things that going to other fields. Maybe I'm writing a television series right now. I'm working with musicians. So when I imagine 10 years from now, I imagine like enlarging the span of things, enlarging the storytelling techniques that I'm using, not only writing books, but also doing other storytelling elements. And who knows what will bring the future. If you would tell me, 30 years ago that I would be sitting in a Zoom session talking with respectable professor about and listeners from Illinois, I would think this is complete fiction. So who knows? Let's see what will the future bring.
Okay. We'll have to meet again and see, maybe in 5 years or so. My clock shows 9. I don't know, Crystal, are there any urgent questions from the audience that we want to? I know that you like questions for the audience, and I captured all the time, but I felt that it was necessary to cover all these elements. But Crystal, can we take at least one question?
Well, there's one quick question from the audience, and I think it's referencing one of the earlier points in the discussion. What was the name of your favorite book that became popular with young people?
World Cup Wishes.
Perfect. Thank you. I think we have time for one more question if someone has any. If not, I think we'll be close to closing comments.
I want to say one thing, two things actually. Going back to the beginning about what we do at Northwestern, the landscape has changed, as you know, as we all know. Campuses of 2025 are not the campuses of 2020, and what we want to institutionalize or redo is having the program of scholars in residence that would be able to come for a period of, I don't know, 8-10 weeks and do their work at Northwestern, and also share with the students and with the faculty the work they are doing. And this relates to what you say, we are negotiating right now, having an Israeli professor come and teach a course on post-traumatic stress syndrome, PTSD, that I know plays such a major role in your worldview. And we chose this topic, number one, to get away from the politics and the controversies, but rather focus on something that American society and Israeli society has in common, because PTSD in the US is a very, very popular phenomenon, and I think we can both learn together. So who knows? Maybe we'll have the honor to have you come to Northwestern and contribute to your fruitful contribution to Israeli society, to Israeli culture, to world culture, Italian culture, Japanese, and wherever we are. Eshkol, I really thank you for the openness, for sharing all those intimate insights, and I hope we meet again soon.
Thank you very much. It was a lovely hour and fascinating questions. And also you built it like a story. It had a beginning, it had a development, and it had an end that is connected to the beginning. So it was like a short story.
Now you act like a real Middle Easterner. But it's good. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, everybody who came and joined us from wherever you are. Goodbye and good night, good morning.
Bye.
Thank you again to everybody.